So how do we do a data table with this Heinz leverage buyout model? So here you see the model on its left with inputs such as the purchase price, and over further to the right we're seeing the income statements, cash flow statements, and so forth. And then further down we see the exit analysis, which is simply taking EBITDA. We're going to be most concerned about the last year of this project, times a multiple, and getting enterprise value, and then from there computing the multiple of invested capital and the IRR for the project. And our default or base case IRR is 20.1, and actually that's 20.13, just to make sure we're sort of keeping things exact, keeping them on track. So how do we do a data table? And what we want to do with a data table is, of course, compute multiple outputs given a certain change in input. And so the first one let's look at is what happens if the exit multiple changes. Now here we've been told it's 13.3, which is a computation from the entry multiple, which we like to keep the same to begin with, to be conservative. And I've extended it out a little bit so we have a few more decimals, but really 13.3 would be enough to make our calculations. So to do this, first we're going to do a column. We're going to present a column, and it's going to have all the different exit multiples we might want to investigate. So I'll just put in 10, and then you see I'm putting in a formula, which is to take the last cell and add 1, and we can do that numerous times. And just for fun and for comparison purposes, actually let's go by halves, be a little bit more granular. And just for fun, I'm going to stop in here, and I'm going to put in 13.31, which is our default multiple, or the multiple that's already baked into the model. So here's a column with exit multiples that we might think we might get. I'm not sure how we'll get 20.3 out of this, but we could imagine that. And then the next thing to do is to figure out what our output is. And in this case, we're interested in the IRR, the last year IRR for our output. And to set up a data table, we simply reference that cell. In this case, it's Z52, and put it right there. So far we haven't made any calculation, and now it's time has come to simply create the data table. Now we want to know in this data table what's going to change over and over to make this column produce various IRRs. Well, these are the numbers that are going in, but the cell that's going to change is actually Z43. So keep note of that, or remember that Z43 is the cell that we'll want to change over and over again to make our computation in the data table. So we're going to go up here to data, and the data tables are one of the 3 types of what-if analysis. We're going to go on to the data table. Oops, I actually left something out, I'm sorry. First we want to show or outline just the data table. So notice I've included this column, and I've included the second column. Now I go to data, and then what-if analysis, data table. And since we have our information in a column, we're changing the column input cell. I don't know that that's intuitive, but that's the way it is. And we'll put in Z43, which remember is this input that we're changing, and hit OK. And our data table is immediately filled out. Let's make it a little bit more useful, or a little easier to read, by restricting our, or changing our format. Let's leave this one the same. So we see that if the exit multiple turns out to be 10 times EBITDA and everything else stays the same, or everything is presented as in the model, our IRR will be 8.13%. If multiples skyrocket for some reason and we can exit at 20 times, 20.3 times, we'll get an IRR of 36.1%. So we can kind of double check this to make sure it makes sense by doing a couple things. One is, does it make sense that as the exit multiple goes up, that our IRR should go up? And of course that makes sense. So we want to make sure the relationship's the right way. Secondly, we want to look at our base case and make sure that it duplicated or presented to us the correct IRR. So if we put in 13.31, which is what we knew the number was before, we should get 20.13, which is sort of our base case. And again, we get that here. Now, the other critique I'd make of this data table is I think we've gone a little extreme here at the end. I wouldn't want to be presenting to anybody this kind of these high returns. So I'll just clear the content there. Can't change part of a data table. So when I do the data table next time, I'll change that, because that was a little bit too much of a change. And that's how you do a data table.